A robot went on sale in Shenzhen with silicone skin, manicured nails, real hair, and a heartbeat warm body temperature. And within weeks, over 13,000 people had already paid to bring one home. Not reserved, not wishlisted, paid for in a country where the cheapest version costs more than most people earn in 3 years. This is the story of the U1, built by a Chinese robotics company called UB Tech under a new brand it calls UWorld, and it is being described, without much exaggeration, as the most human-looking robot ever put up for public sale anywhere on Earth. Not a research prototype, not a trade show demo that vanishes the moment the cameras stop rolling. A catalog item with a price tag, a delivery date, and a waiting list. Let's start with what this thing actually looks like, because the physical engineering here is the part that's making people uneasy before they've even had a conversation with it. The U1 is covered in soft, flexible silicone skin designed to mimic the texture and give of real human flesh. It has real hair. It has manicured nails. Underneath that skin sit 88 independent servo joints, engineered to produce fluid, lifelike movement rather than the stiff, mechanical motion people usually associate W with robots. Cameras are embedded directly behind its eyes, tracking the people around it in real time. Microphones are built into its body to listen. Sensors are woven throughout its chest and limbs to read the physical world it's standing in. And then there's the detail that seems to unsettle people more than almost anything else about it. Some versions of this technology are built with an internal heating system designed to keep the robot's body temperature somewhere between 90 and 97 degrees Fahrenheit, close enough to human body heat that touching it doesn't feel like touching a machine at all. The stated goal, according to the spouse, engineers behind this kind of design, is to create something that feels warm and approachable rather than cold and mechanical. Whether that goal succeeds or simply pushes the whole experience further into unsettling territory depends entirely on who you ask. Underneath all that lifelike skin sits a surprisingly ordinary piece of hardware handling the actual thinking. Reports on the robot's internals point to a Rockchip RK35588 chip as the processing core running its perception and interaction systems, a capable, commercially available embedded processor, not some exotic custom silicon built specifically for this project. It's a small but telling detail. The magic O. If the U1 isn't buried in some secret breakthrough chip nobody else has access to, it's in how the company has stacked together sensors, skin, servo motors, and an emotional AI model on top of hardware that, on paper, isn't radically different from what you'd find in a mid-range consumer device. The innovation here is almost entirely in integration and presentation, not in some singular technological leap. UB Tech's own head of the UWorld brand, a man named Michael Tam, stood on stage at the launch event in Shenzhen and delivered the tagline the company has built its entire marketing campaign around. Our bionic robots can accompany you for a lifetime. It's a bold promise for a piece of hardware with a battery life currently measured in hours, not days. But it captures exactly what UB Tech is trying to sell here. Not a gadget, not an appliance, a presence in your home that's designed to stay. The pricing structure tells its own story about who this product is actually built for and how seriously the company expects people to take it. The U1 comes in 4 tiers. THE Lite model starts at 119,800 yuan, which works out to roughly 17,600 US dollars. Above that sits the U1 Pro at 169,800 yuan. Then, at the very top, the U1 Ultra, offered in both male and female versions, with the female model priced at 880,000 yuan and the male ME. Odell priced at a staggering 990,000 yuan, or roughly $146,000. For context, that's more expensive than a lot of cars, more expensive than many houses in parts of the world. THIS is not a mass-market consumer gadget. In the way a smartphone or a smart speaker is, this is a luxury purchase, priced closer to a piece of jewelry or a small property than a household appliance. And yet, despite that price tag, the pre-orders kept coming. UB Tech announced that pre-orders had already surpassed 13,300 units within the first month of sales opening, with deliveries scheduled to begin in September. To put that number into perspective, one financial analysis pointed out that 13,000 units represents close to 7.2% of the total number of humanoid robots shipped globally across the entire previous year. In other words, in a matter of weeks, one single product line from one single company generated demand equivalent to nearly 3/4 of an entire year's worth of global humanoid robot shipments. That's not a niche curiosity anymore. That's a genuine market signal, whether or not the broader public is comfortable with what it signals. The launch event itself was staged with a level of theater that made clear UB Tech understood exactly what kind of cultural moment it was trying to create. Held in Shenzhen on June 30th, the presentation leaned hard into science fiction imagery rather than shying away from it. Robots dressed in outfits and styling clearly inspired by video games, all of it staged in front of a giant screen displaying a spaceship. It was less a corporate product reveal and more a piece of spectacle, designed to generate exactly the kind of viral coverage and social media debate that followed. Attendees at the event we re-invited to approach and touch the robots directly, with widely shared footage showing people reaching out to U1's face, testing the give of the silicone skin against their fingertips in a moment that captured, better than any spec sheet could, just how far this technology has traveled from the uncanny, stiff-jointed robots most people still picture when they hear the word android. So who exactly is UB Tech selling this to? The company has been remarkably direct about its target audience and the ANSA 1 product launch. UB Tech's head of brand described the market as colossal, and the numbers back that framing up. China is home to roughly 90 million adults currently living alone and roughly 118 million so-called empty nest senior citizens, older adults whose children have grown up and moved away, leaving them living independently, often with minimal daily social contact. Layer onto that the fact that somewhere between 10 and 20% of that population may be dealing with mental health challenges ranging from depression to dementia, conditions that often require exactly the kind of attentive, structured emotional and physical presence a human caregiver would normally provide. And you start to understand exactly what problem UB Tech says it's trying to solve. This isn't a small, speculative corner of Chinese society either. Tam described the addressable market as roughly 120 million single adults and around 320 million people over the age of 60 combined. Numbers on that scale, in a country grappling simultaneously with a shrinking birth rate, an aging population, and a cultural shift away from multi-generational households, start to look less like a product opportunity and more like a demographic reckoning that companies are racing to build technology around. Chojin, the founder, CEO, and chairman of UB Tech, addressed the sticker shock head-on during the launch. And his reasoning is worth hearing in full because it rev-ALs exactly how the company is trying to reframe what a six-figure robot is actually worth. Joe argued that if a robot can eventually perform household chores, provide genuine emotional companionship, and maintain an appealing, lifelike appearance all at once, then a price somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. And Yuan isn't actually unreasonable for what you're getting. He also insisted the current pricing still leaves the company with a reasonable profit margin, while promising that mass production, once it scales up across broader consumer segments, will gradually push manufacturing costs and eventually retail prices down over time. Even so, audience members at the event reportedly reacted with visible, audible surprise when the actual price tags were revealed on screen, suggesting that even people who showed up specifically to see this technology in person weren't fully braced for what it would cost to bring one home. So what can the U1 actually do beyond looking startlingly human? The company says its emotional AI system can recognize roughly 20 distinct emotional states, using a combination of voice tone, physical gestures, and behavioral interaction patterns. With an accuracy rate the company claims exceeds 90%. It's designed to hold conversations about a user's day-to-day concerns and worries. It can remind users to take medication at the right times. It's built to help identify early warning signs of health issues that might otherwise go unnoticed in someone living alone. In one of the more oddly specific examples the company has offered, it's even designed to sit and watch a sports match alongside its owner, reacting and engaging the way a companion might. But here's where the marketing runs directly into the limits of what current robotics can physically deliver, and it's worth being completely upfront about the gap. The U1, at least in its current form, cannot cook. It cannot clean. It doesn't do laundry or dishes or any of the physical household labor that a lot of people, frankly, might assume a six-figure humanoid robot should be capable of. Its head, eyes, and mouth can move expressively, and its body can perform roughly 90% of basic human movements according to the company's own figures, but full domestic chore capability simply isn't part of what you're paying for right now, and its battery life caps out at around 4 hours before it needs to recharge. A limitation industry observers have pointed out falls well short of the 8 to 10 hour minimum most people would consider genuinely useful for an all-day companion. UB Tech has also been explicit, almost offensively so, about one specific boundary. The U1 is not designed or marketed for intimate physical relationships. The company has stated this directly, adding the qualifier, for now, in a way that has done very little to quiet the discomfort surrounding the product. Purchasing terms restrict the robot to adult buyers and adult operators only. And that restriction, combined with the robot's startlingly realistic human appearance, has become one of the central flashpoints in the public reaction to this entire launch. Because the reaction has been intense. And it has not been uniformly positive. Chinese social media exploded with commentary the moment the launch event footage started circulating, with reactions splitting sharply down the middle. Some younger users online expressed genuine excitement, with plenty of posts joking, or perhaps, F-joking, about being ready to live with a robot partner. Others reacted with a much sharper, more skeptical edge. One widely circulated comment captured the darker red on the whole situation bluntly. Buying this thing, the commenter said, is essentially like buying a public camera and installing it inside your own home. Except this particular camera is shaped like a person and might be spying on you for the manufacturer. That comment cuts straight to the heart of the biggest concern hovering over this entire product category: privacy. Think about what the U1 actually is, stripped of its silicone skin and marketing language. It's a device with cameras built into its eyes, microphones built into its body, and sensors spread across its frame designed to sit inside someone's home, in their bedroom, in their kitchen, in the most private corners of their daily life, for years at a time if the lifetime companion pitch is taken seriously. It listens to conversations. It observes routines. It's specifically engineered to build an ongoing emotional relationship with the person living alongside it, which by definition means accumulating an enormous amount of deeply personal information over time. UB Tech has tried to get ahead of exactly this concern. The company says the data its U1 robots process is encrypted, and that emotional data, along with memory logs, are stored locally, directly on the device itself, rather than being sent up to a corporate cloud server somewhere. The company has also stated clearly that user data will not be used to train its broader AI mode. Eat less. At the June launch event, UB Tech went further, announcing the formation of a dedicated ethics committee to help oversee exactly these kinds of concerns as the product moves from pre-order to actual delivery. Whether that's enough to satisfy skeptics is a genuinely open question, and even generally sympathetic coverage of the launch has flagged real gaps in that reassurance. Local, on-device storage doesn't automatically solve everything. Who has administrative access to the robot? How are software? Updates handled, and could they quietly change what data gets collected or where it goes? What happens to the accumulated emotional and behavioral data if the robot is resold, sent in for repair, or physically tampered with by someone other than its owner? These aren't hypothetical concerns dreamed up by critics looking to nitpick. They're the same category of F questions that have dogged every previous wave of always-on smart home devices. Except this time, the device in question has a human face, sleeps in the same room as its owner, and is explicitly designed to be trusted with people's most vulnerable emotional moments. There's also a stranger, more unsettling wrinkle buried inside UB Tech's broader vision for this technology, one that goes beyond the standard companion robot pitch entirely. The company has floated the idea of building robot replicas of deceased loved ones, incorporating three-dimensional facial reconstruction technology to recreate the appearance of someone who has passed away. It's the kind of concept that sounds like it was pulled directly from a science fiction anthology about grief and technology gone slightly too far, and it has drawn sharp criticism from observers who see it as an ethically fraught direction for a company already navigating enough controversy with its core product line. Beyond privacy and the more philosophical unease, there's a much more grounded practical skepticism running through the industry's reaction to this launch, and it centers on a simple question: can UB Tech actually deliver on what it's promising? The company has set an aggressive target of beginning mass produ Kikshin in September, with plans to deliver more than 10,000 units within just 3 months of that start date. That's a genuinely enormous ramp-up. UB Tech's entire annual delivery capacity across all of last year was reportedly only around on 8,000 units total. Jumping from roughly 1,000 units a year to over 10,000 units in a single quarter is the kind of manufacturing leap that has made analysts visibly nervous, and UB Tech's stock price has swung sharply in the weeks following the announcement as investors try to figure out whether this is a genuine breakthrough or an overpromise. The company simply can't back up with actual factory output. That skepticism is compounded by UB Tech's underlying financial situation, which isn't exactly a picture of stability. The company has posted losses totaling more than 5.6 billion yuan over the past 6 years. It's also facing increasingly fierce competition from other major Chinese robotics players, particularly Unitree and Agabot, both of which have been carving out significant ground in the broader humanoid robot market. UB Tech's strategy of simultaneously pushing into industrial robotics, commercial robotics, and now this entirely new consumer companion category all at once has led some industry watchers to describe the company as spreading itself dangerously thin, chasing too many markets at once rather than dominating one. Still, it's worth stepping back and placing this single product launch inside the much bigger picture of what's happening across China's robotics sector as a whole. Because the U1 isn't an isolated curiosity, it's a symptom of an industry moving at genuinely startling speed. According to banking group Barclays, China accounted for a full 85% of all humanoid robot installations worldwide last year. 85%. Not a plurality, not a leading share. Nearly the entire global total. The Chinese government has formally designated robotics a strategic national industry, and by last year, more than 140 separate Chinese companies had already launched over 330 distinct humanoid robot models between them. Robots are already a visible, unremarkable part of everyday life across the country. Greeting guests in hotel lobbies, assisting shoppers in malls, working alongside human EMPO, employees on factory floors. The U1 isn't emerging out of nowhere. It's emerging out of the single most robot-saturated consumer and industrial environment on the planet. And it isn't even the only ultra-realistic companion robot racing toward the Chinese market right now. A separate Chinese startup developing a companion robot named Moya has been generating its own headlines with a projected price tag of around $173,000, aimed specifically at healthcare companies looking to deploy social companion robots for patients, with a planned release later this year. It also includes that same striking body temperature feature, designed to make physical contact feel warm and man rather than mechanical and cold. This is starting to look less like a single company's bold experiment and more like the early formation of an entirely new product category, with multiple well-funded players racing to define what a hyper-realistic companion robot actually is before the market settles around a standard. There's a broader cultural anxiety wrapped around all of this too, one that extends well beyond China's borders. As AI systems designed to build trust and emotional connection with users have proliferated globally, concerns have grown about the psychological risks of forming emotional attachments to something that isn't actually alive, isn't actually conscious, and is fundamentally a product built by a company with its own commercial incentives. There have already been deeply troubling cases elsewhere in the world involving AI chatbots and allegations that emotionally intense, unsupervised relationships with those systems contributed to tragic outcomes, including suicides. Layering that same category of emotional AI onto a physical body with a human face, warm skin, and a lifelike voice doesn't necessarily solve those risks. In some ways, giving an AI companion an actual physical presence in someone's home, someone's daily routine, someone's most private and vulnerable moments, could make the emotional stakes considerably higher, not lower. To its credit, UBTech has tried to position at least part of this launch around a genuinely sympathetic use case rather than pure novelty or luxury indulgence. The company announced plans to donate 100 units of the U1 to mental wellness programs this year, specifically targeting isolated seniors and people managing conditions like depression or early-stage dementia, where structured social interaction has real, documented therapeutic value. Analysts who study this space have generally agreed there's genuine potential value in companion robots for specific, well-defined niches like elderly care or mental health support. But that same analysis comes with a significant caveat. For the technology to actually work as intended, it has to clear what's known as the uncanny valley, the well-documented psychological phenomenon where something that looks almost but not quite perfectly human triggers deep unease rather than comfort or connection. Whether the current generation of hyper-realistic robots has actually cleared that bar, or whether it's still landing squarely inside the unsettling zone it's trying to escape, remains a genuinely unresolved question, one that 13,000 paying customers are apparently willing to bet 6 figures on finding out for themselves. There's also a broader question worth sitting with here about what this kind of purchase actually says about the buyers themselves, and about the society producing this level of demand for it. 13,000 people didn't stumble into this purchase by accident. At these prices, buying a U1 requires deliberate, considered financial commitment. Some of that demand almost certainly comes from curiosity, from people with disposable income who simply want to own the newest, strangest piece of technology. UBTech's own targeting data and the broader demographic reality underpinning it suggests a meaningful share of that demand is coming from somewhere much more sincere. People genuinely grappling with isolation, searching for something, anything that might make an empty apartment or a quiet, solitary evening feel a little less lonely. That tension between genuine human need and the uncomfortable commercialization of that need runs through nearly every piece of coverage this launch has generated. It's easy to be cynical about a company slapping a 6-figure price tag on loneliness and calling it innovation. It's also easy to dismiss the whole product as a gimmick, a headline-grabbing stunt dressed up in silicone and marketing language borrowed from science fiction. But dismissing it entirely risks missing what's actually driving this moment. China's demographic trajectory is genuinely severe. The country is aging faster than almost any other major economy on the planet. Its birth rate has fallen sharply for years running, and traditional family structures that once guaranteed built-in companionship for elderly relatives have been eroding steadily as younger generations move to cities for work, leaving parents and grandparents behind in increasingly solitary circumstances. Against that backdrop, the idea of a robot companion stops sounding quite so much like science fiction indulgence and starts sounding like a genuine, if deeply imperfect, attempt to address a real and growing social problem that isn't being solved fast enough through other means. None of that makes the privacy questions, the ethical gray areas, or the manufacturing skepticism disappear, of course. Those concerns are entirely valid, and they deserve to be taken seriously rather than waved away simply because the underlying social need is real. A product can be addressing a genuine problem and still be worth scrutinizing closely for how it collects data, how honestly it's being marketed, and whether the company behind it can actually deliver on the promises it's making at scale. UBTech's own history of financial losses and its aggressive, arguably overreaching production targets give plenty of reason for caution before treating the U1 as a fully solved, market-ready product, rather than an ambitious, still unproven bet. What happens next will likely say more about the future of this entire product category than the launch event itself did. If UBTech manages to hit its September production targets and actually gets 10,000 plus units into paying customers' homes without major technical failures, safety incidents, or privacy breaches, it will represent a genuine proof of concept for Hyper. Realistic companion robots is a viable consumer category, not just a curiosity. If the rollout stumbles, if battery life proves as limiting in practice as critics predict, if data security concerns materialize into an actual breach, or if manufacturing simply can't scale fast enough to meet the demand UBTech has already generated, the entire category could take a significant credibility hit that ripples out to every competitor racing to launch something similar, including the team behind Moya and whichever other companies are quietly working on their own versions of this same idea. Either way, the line has already moved. A robot with a warm chest, a human face, and a six-figure price tag is no longer confined to concept videos and trade show floors. It's sitting in a warehouse somewhere in southern China right now, waiting to be boxed up and shipped to the first wave of 13,000 people who decided that whatever this technology is, whatever ethical and technical questions still surround it, they wanted to be among the first to find out what it's actually like to live alongside it. What makes this moment feel genuinely significant, beyond the eye-popping price tags and the understandably visceral reactions to a robot with a heartbeat-warm chest and manicured fingernails, is what it represents as a turning point. This isn't a lab demonstration anymore. It isn't a concept video designed to go viral and then quietly disappear. It's a commercial product with an invoice number, a delivery window, and tens of thousands of real customers who have already decided the technology, however imperfect, however ethically complicated, however financially risky for the company producing it, is worth bringing into their homes right now. Whether the U1 ultimately succeeds as a business, whether UBTech can actually manufacture 10,000 of these things by the end of the year, and whether society at large is genuinely ready for hyper-realistic robots designed to fill the emotional gaps left by isolation and loneliness, all questions that remain wide open. But the line separating science fiction from consumer retail, at least for this one specific product, has already been crossed, and there's no putting that back.